Remember the amylase and lipase are the major indicators, right? And we also get hypocalcemia. Why do we get hypocalcemia? In other words, what's lipase breakdown? What's in the mesentery? When you cause fat necrosis, what do you release? Free radicals. What do free radicals like to do? Destroy tissue. Okay, and so how does the body counteract that?
Soaps.
Using what? From where? From the blood. So what happens to blood calcium levels when you have acute pancreatitis? They get low. And can hypocalcemia cause other problems and things? You know the answer is either yes or no. What do you think? Yes. Okay, so that's one of the things we'll see with that. So one of the big problems is what will that cause? If you have hypocalcemia, what does that do to the endocrine function of the pancreas? In order to release most hormones, what has to move into the endocrine cells? Calcium causes mobilization in the secretory vesicles, causes them to fuse and release their contents, right? What if you don't have calcium? Is the rest of the pancreas going to be affected even if it doesn't have necrosis in that area? Yes, and so you will get a functional diabetes mellitus with that if you're not careful. Okay? So what would be one of the things you could do then to help counteract this? You may have to give calcium supplementation to the animals. Also, if you do your best to try to shut down whatever's causing the pancreatitis, it's helpful too. But you may have to give calcium supplementation so that the pancreas can start, the rest of the pancreas, which is normal, can start functioning properly. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and look at our exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. And what's the difference between insufficiency and inflammation or necrosis? Can inflammation and necrosis lead to insufficiency? Wipes out enough cells. But can also other things which may cause fibrosis and all this type of thing in the pancreas, could that lead to exocrine pancreatic insufficiency? And also, how about hypocalcemia? Okay, can that do? So you can get functional exocrine pancreatic insufficiency as well as, being damaged. Okay. As far as exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, it's the most common cause is chronic pancreatitis. Because if you have excessive bouts of pancreatitis, what do you start to replace normal tissue with? Fibrous tissue. Is fibrous tissue going to quit, or will it continue to do it? And then it will go and mess up more and more of the functional part of the pancreas, right? And so, again, the dog is more susceptible to this because lots of times when they have acute pancreatitis, it's very, it's self-limiting, but it does cause some damage. So you replace that and it'll be all right for a while, then you might have another acute attack and replace more connective tissue, so that after a while you have a sufficient decrease in the amount of functional pancreatic acid cells to give you this, it doesn't work right. Okay? It's more common in the dog because, again, they have a lower threshold, or when they have acute pancreatitis, it's not as severe usually as it is in the cat. And so it's a kind of a built thing that keeps going and going and going until finally the pancreas says, I've had enough, you replaced me with too much connective tissue, I can't work. Okay, so acute pancreatitis is much more commonly seen in the cat because they have usually a really more severe reaction to it, so they get taken to the veterinarian, so they report it. Whereas in the dog, it can be so low level that they don't really notice it until it gets to the point where you've replaced so much of your functional tissue that you have insufficiency. Everybody with me on that? Okay. Now, as far as cats, when you do have those bouts with pancreatic insufficiency, that can cause, again, is going to hinder the release of diabetes, of insulin and stuff very often, because your You're using that saponification, because what do you need to cause the release of almost all your hormones? You need calcium to influx into the cell and do that, right? If you have pancreatitis, where's the calcium? It's getting bound up in that saponification of the fat there. Okay? And so basically it's kind of a, some animals would start with it and it just keeps escalating until later on they have both the symptoms of a severe chronic pancreatitis as well as diabetes mellitus when you go on there. Okay? And one of the problems, in other words, the glucose will come into the pancreatic cells, but if the calcium doesn't come in with it, where does the insulin stay? In those beta cells. And so that's why the hypocalcemia will lead to diabetes mellitus. So if I give that animal calcium supplementation early enough, can that override that problem? Yes. And so you can get rid of the signs of diabetes mellitus. But unfortunately in the cat, remember they have severe pancreatitis, and so you can just keep wiping out a bunch of the cells. And does that, those enzymes you release with pancreatitis, do they say, well, I'm not going to bother my sister Allet here because, it might hurt it, right? No, so they just mess up everything. And again, fibrous connective tissue, does it care what it eradicates? No. So in the long run, you will finally see some pancreatic insufficiency in the cat. But their main problem is acute attacks. Whereas the dog is kind of insolent going on there, they don't have quite as severe signs. And so you don't really notice what's going on until it's gone on so many times that now you've messed up your amount of functional islet tissue also. Everybody with me on that? And so you see the same types of symptoms in both the dog and the cat, but the dog is most often you don't really get a good diagnosis until it gets to the point where they have pancreatic insufficiency, whereas the cat, cats don't like pain. When they get pain, they yowl and everything, so they get taken to the veterinarian sooner, and so you usually will catch it a little bit earlier in there. Okay? Now, as far as the, can you use serum amylase or lipase to tell you if you have pancreatic insufficiency? What's going to happen to blood levels? Where do most normal ranges start? At 0. Is there any such thing as a negative number as far as these assays are concerned? So in other words, serum amylase and lipase are of little use to detect a chronic pancreatic insufficiency. All right? So we have to have other tests to do that. Well, this is lesions first. You can see over there, that one picture over there on your alls on the left. It's the chronic pancreatitis, and you see a small pancreas with fibrous tissue, those raised areas or raised white areas or fibrous tissue. And here's a histosection of it. And where's all the normal pancreatic islet cells? They're not there. They're replaced by the connective tissue. And again, this is the problem. Is the dog has repeated small attacks of pancreatitis. Sometimes you don't even detect them. But every time they have one, they damage some tissue. This connective tissue knows when to stop. And so it will continue to go and encroach upon other islets and stuff and other acinar structures. And so that's why it's more common to see chronic pancreatitis in the dog. Okay? Now, as far as your clinical signs, what's the stool going to look like? Are you digesting the fats or anything like that? So you're going to have a soft, pale, and voluminous stool. And it doesn't smell very good. Take that from experience, okay? Also, if the animal's not able to release pancreatic enzymes in adequate amounts, what does that do to its ability to get nutrients and stuff from the GI tract into the body? Can you absorb those nutrients until they're broken down? And what breaks them down mainly? Pancreatic enzymes. If they don't do it completely, they start the process. Okay? And so you get weight loss because they can't ingest their food. Now they may have a ravenous appetite. Does that usually go along with weight loss? No, so you know something's wrong. They may have it because they're eating because their body's saying food, 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 and they're trying to do it, but the pancreas is saying, "Oh, forget it. I'm on a long extended vacation, so you're on your own." Okay, that's one of the problems we'll see with it. Now you can get greasy soiling because there's going to be undigested fats in that feces, and so you'll get a lot of greasy areas on their around the rectum and those areas right there. And in cats, you can see it in other places. Why do you see more greasy areas in other places on their body? What do cats do all the time? They groom themselves. So they'll lick back there and then they'll lick up here and everything. So they transfer all that greasy feces to different parts of their body. Okay? And basically your diagnosis is made by history, clinical signs, stool evaluation, and blood work, because what all that involves? Clinical pathology, right? What are you all sitting in right now? Clinical pathology, okay? Now the test, the serum trypsin-like immunoreactivity test, is the most sensitive test for diagnosing estrogen pancreatic insufficiency in the dog and also in the cat. It's not as well established in the cat, but it does work, okay? Now, you also can do some fecal tests. And you can use these fecal tests both for determining if you have estrogen pancreatic insufficiency or if you determine that you're getting malabsorption. Okay? So basically, you can do several things. What's Sudan 3 stain? What kind of fats?
Lipase?
Neutral fats. Lipase is not a fat, it's an enzyme.
Nope.
Neutral fats. In other words, the fats that are in the diet. That what has to break down to be able to start the digestive process of them? Pancreatic lipase. If you don't have pancreatic lipase, all those other little lipases can't work that are in the GI tract. So what do you see in the stool? You're going to see a lot of fat in it, right? So we can stain that stool with Sudan 3 or Sudan 4. And you get all these reddish areas in there and everything, so you know that there is a problem as far as lipase is concerned. Okay? You can also look for stain for starch. Why starch? What's a starch? It's a complex carbohydrate. Can the animal absorb starches? What does it have to break down into? It has to break down into the monosaccharides and disaccharides, right? What enzyme from the pancreas starts that process? Amylase. So if you don't have amylase, what are you going to see out in the feces? Basically, you're going to see the starch, the complex carbohydrates. And what can you, besides Lugol stain, what else can you stain that with? Anybody? You use iodine. Put iodine on it. You'll see it coming up as black, big blackish blobs and stuff. Okay. Also, does the pancreas secrete things which break down muscle? How about your trypsin and your chymotrypsinogen and stuff? So if you don't have that and the animal is on a meat diet, what are you going to see in the feces? You're going to see meat fibers, muscle fibers and stuff. Now if that animal's eating some, this Alpo or something like that, that says meat and meat byproducts, which means it was sitting beside the meat and meat byproducts when it was made, okay? And so you might not, depending on what the diet of the animal is, you may not see the staining up, okay? Now, so there's one problem with those things. Where are you taking the sample from? Down there at the end, right? Can things happen going through that digestive tract that could alter your results and stuff? So these are screening tests. They can be very readily done. All you need is a microscope and this reagents to do. And you can look at it, and if you see, well, this looks like we've got fat in here, muscle fibers in here, then that tells you to go do some of the more sensitive tests to verify that's what's going on. Okay? And we can do basically the, what do you think the gelatin digestion test means? When they say film test, anybody? What coats X-ray film? What's on the coating on X-ray film? Polysaccharide materials. Okay? It's a proteinaceous matrix on there also. It's gray when it's fresh, when it hasn't been used, it's a grayish color. That's the emulsion, and then emulsion has a good bit of protein, glycoproteins and things in it. Alright? So you can take a strip of that film, unexposed, once you expose it, that's gone. Unexposed film, and if you dip it, excuse me, in, what's going on there? Dip it in some, if you dip it in your you know, take feces, emulsion from your feces, and you dip it in there. And if it goes to be clear, what does that tell you is present in your feces? Proteases. So that tells you, well, pancreas is working. If it doesn't get clear, then that tells you, well, we're lacking the proteases. Everybody follow that? Also, you can take the tube test, and this is where you take a, proteinaceous material, a gelatin type thing. Remember that agar and stuff, gelatin agar thing? It's supposed to solidify when it gets cold, but if you have proteases to break it down, it won't solidify. So you take that agar gel stuff, you put your fecal sample in there, emulsion of your fecal sample in there, and put it in the refrigerator. If it solidifies, what does that tell you you do not have in your fecal sample? You don't have those proteases in there. Okay, but again, where are you getting the sample? All the way at the end, right? Kind of a lot happened between the beginning of the small intestine and down there in the rectal area. So these are screening tests. They tell you, well, you need to go do some more expensive testing to find out exactly what's going on here. Okay? And the most sensitive we've had before is that serum trypsin-like immunoreactivity, or TLI. You also see it trypsinogen-like, same thing. And remember, trypsinogen is the substance that's secreted by the pancreas, right? It goes down into the gut and is activated into trypsin, and trypsin then will do what to proteins? What's trypsin going to do to proteins? Break them down, okay? So with this, any endocrine organ, 100% of the stuff it excretes go into the target, or some of it leak into the blood. Some of it's always going to leak into the blood. So there's always a low level of this serum trypsinogen-like immunoreactivity in the blood. Now what if the pancreas is insufficient? What will happen to those blood levels? Decrease. This is one of the few things in clinical chemistry where a decreased value is very significant. If you have pancreatitis, you may have a little bit of elevation because you're going to be leaking more out and blood's going to be taking more of the trypsin up. But that's not the best test to tell you if you've got pancreatitis, okay? But it's one of the premier tests to diagnose pancreatic insufficiency with. Everybody follow me on that? Okay. Now, normal values in dogs is less than 5, greater than 2.5. So if you're less than 2.5, then that tells you you've got exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. And increased TLI can be caused by acute pancreatitis, but again, increased TLI is not what we're looking at. We're looking for decreased values. Okay? This is very, very specific in the dogs. It's used off and on in the cats because they can't make up their mind exactly whether or not it is the best test, because what do you need to verify a test that works? What do you need to verify it with? You need a lot of N numbers and things, right? To give you statistical proof, right? Well, remember, exocrine pancreatic insufficiency is not that common in the cat. So it's taken a while to get enough samples to give you significance. Okay, remember standard of error and all that good stuff and everything. They thought they had it, and they said, oh, I don't know. Then they said, well, we better do more work. And so it's probably works fine in the cat, but they just don't want to come out and say that just in case yet. It probably works fine in the cat. So it's a tested choice for exocrine pancreatic insufficiency in the dog, also in the human for that matter. Okay. Now, as far as another one, we have pentyramide para-aminobenzoic acid. Pentyramide PABA. Okay. This is a substance that you give orally, and chymotrypsin, when it gets into the gut, chymotrypsin from the pancreas will cleave the bounds between the pentyramide and the PABA. PABA is readily absorbed into the blood. So what you're doing then is that you can then measure urine levels or blood levels of PABA. If the urine levels are low, that tells you the stuff got absorbed. If your serum levels are high, that tells you the stuff got absorbed. So what does that tell you the pancreas had to have been able to do in order to absorb that PABA? It had to produce the chymotrypsinogen. Okay. Now, problem is though, what if I have malabsorption? Could that affect this test? Because you may be breaking it down, but the malabsorption says, well, you're going out, I don't want you, you're going to leave the body, right? And so there are other things, it's not quite as sensitive as the, trypsinogen-like immunoreactivity is. Okay? Well, what if I had an animal that had basically problem with it, it had normal serum trypsinogen-like immunoreactivity levels in the blood. Okay. We proved that it did not have problems with it wasn't a malabsorptive problem, but my bacterial papa test was delayed. What does that tell me? Where's the problem? We know it's not in the pancreas, it's not pancreatic insufficiency because our most sensitive test is normal, right? We know it's not malabsorption because we did the test, fat absorption test and everything, so we didn't have malabsorption. So where could the problem be? What if there's a problem between the pancreas and the intestinal tract? In other words, duct blockage. Remember, trypsinogen-like immunoreactivity, it goes from the pancreas directly into the blood. That's not going to tell us if it's getting down to the gut, is it? But this bacterial papa, you've got to excrete that, chymotrypsin down in there for this test to work. So it might mean we've got some duct blockage in there. Everybody follow that? Okay, you'll get some cases on it later on. You'll be able to figure it out for the exam, right? All right, now you can get some falsely decreased urinary and falsely increased serum papa levels because of renal failure, because it doesn't clear the stuff from the blood like it's supposed to. But hopefully you figure out other ways to determine if you have renal failure going on. Like if the animal's urinating tons of urine every 3 minutes, what you think? You got a renal problem? So that's usually not a problem as far as diagnosis. This is just showing you the mechanisms behind the bacterial papa test.